Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I cap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 25th of February, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, Superfizz shared today that we now have 10 million ETH staked on the Beacon chain, including the accrued rewards. So, you can see this on various trackers. The one that Superfizz linked to is launchpad.ethereum.org. You can see down here the total ETH staked at 10 million or over 10 million, total validators at almost 300,000, and the current APR at 4.9%. Now, there are a bunch of other websites you can use to track this. I like the Beacon chain website, beacon, CHA.IN. Really like that website. I use it quite regularly, but there's so many out there at this point. I mean, there's doing analytics dashboards for tracking ETH2 stuff. It's just got a crazy amount of stuff going on, right? But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about was, obviously, this is a massive kind of like achievement for the Beacon chain, but like, what does it actually mean? Like, why do we care that there's 10 million ETH staked on the Beacon chain? Well, there are first order effects, and then there are kind of like second order effects, which feed into the first order effects. So let's go through kind of like what the first order effects are. Well, the most obvious is that the more ETH that gets staked on the Beacon chain, the more secure the Beacon chain is, because the more value and the more economic security the Beacon chain has. So right now, current, I guess, like time of recording, this works out to about $26 billion of ETH staked on the Beacon chain, which means it would cost you many billions of dollars to attack the network. Now, the thing is, and the beautiful thing about Ethereum Proof of Stake, is that you can only attack once. And when you do attack, you basically are signaling to the entire network, it's like, hey, here are my validators that I'm attacking with. Come slash me, right? Come literally delete my ETH, right? And kick me out of the active validator set, which means you can't just keep attacking. And that would be extremely costly. Like, if you wanted to acquire even 33% of the network in order to kind of like censor people on the Beacon chain, it would require you to acquire like many billions of dollars worth of ETH, and you'd have to try and do this covertly. And the thing is, if you're buying billions of dollars worth of ETH on the open market, good luck. Good luck not pushing the price up a ton by doing that, and good luck not getting noticed too. That's the beautiful thing about these systems, right? Because they're so public, is that I guess like the social layer of Ethereum would call this out straight away and be like, well, why are there, all these validators suddenly trying to come online? Because obviously there's a validator queue as well of like 1,000 or something a day. And by the time you actually get to the point where you can launch your attack, the network has already taken steps. And the network being kind of like, I guess, the network of people, the community, all that sort of stuff, has already taken steps to mitigate that attack, or to at least make it so that the attack is essentially thwarted altogether, or the damage is minimized from this. And as I said, if you're the attacker and you go through with it, you're pretty much going to get slashed straight away, and then all the effort you went through to get to that point where you could attack the network is basically moot. So that is why we love the fact that more ETH is getting staked. It gives us better economic security guarantees, and we're going to get to a point where there's going to be $100+ billion, maybe one day $1 trillion securing the Beacon chain, which is obviously a crap ton of value, right? But then flowing on from that, I think you could say, okay, well, the easier way to attack the network would be to take over existing validators, and you'd be correct, right? This is why we don't want validators centralizing within one group or a small group of kind of like companies or people. So, for example, Coinbase and Kraken right now I would argue they do have too much of the validator share. Now, I've kind of like talked about this before, how I said that centralized exchange and service staking in kind of like a vacuum is okay. It's not it's not bad, it's not good, it's just okay. And that's because I don't expect any of these centralized exchanges or staking service providers to ever attack the network. Like, they have too much I guess like vested interest in just like making sure that they do things correctly and don't attack the network. There's too many other incentives at play for them. It's not their ETH at the end of the day, it's their users' ETH. They're fully doxed, like everyone knows the creators of Coinbase and Kraken and everything like that. But where it gets scary is that it's not in a vacuum. Like, what could happen theoretically is some nation state, probably the US government, could go to Coinbase and Kraken and maybe a bunch of others and say, hey, we are commandeering your validators. We are going to use them to do such and such on the Ethereum network. That's a real possibility, guys. Like, that's definitely what could happen. But the thing is that it's a very low possibility. And if they did that, we've still got the in-protocol kind of mitigations, which is basically being able to slash those actors. And yes, it would be slashing real users with kind of like real ETH on the line, but I mean, that's the risk you take. Like if you're staking with a centralized exchange, that's one of the risks I'm talking about that you take, is that you don't control the keys to your validator. You don't control what happens with it at all. It could get slashed accidentally. It could go offline. You don't control any of that. Coinbase or Kraken, whoever else controls that, and you know, you're just at the mercy of that. For the convenience, of course, like the trade-off is that you get the convenience of not having to kind of like stake on your own, but there is that added risk there. Now, I want to talk about one of the major second-order effects of this, and that's got to do with ETH's price. So this feeds into the first-order effect. Obviously, the higher the ETH price goes, the more valued the more valuable the total amount of ETH staked, the harder it is to attack the network. Now, this is a really nice positive feedback loop, because you expect over time, as more and more ETH gets locked up in staking, where it's literally just sitting there, it's not locked as in it can't be unlocked. I mean, right now it is, but like in the steady state, it'll be able to be withdrawn at some point. But you know, let's say over time it just keeps going up, right? So the more ETH locked in staking, more ETH locked in DeFi, more ETH held as a store of value, more ETH getting burned, that over time pushes ETH's price up. And the higher the price of ETH goes, the more economic security the Beacon chain has, and it doesn't necessarily have to have more ETH to gain more economic security. That's the beautiful thing. Like if right now the Beacon chain just stopped at 10 million ETH staked, but the ETH price went up to 10K, it would have almost 4x the amount of economic security due to the price going up, right, in terms of kind of like USD value, without having to have more ETH staked. And that's going to happen, but I do expect a lot more ETH to get staked over time. I expect as we get closer to the merge, is going to be more staked ETH there, and as we get closer to withdrawals, and when withdrawals are enabled, I actually going to people kind of like to say, oh, you know, there's going to be this massive unlock of funds. Again, as I've explained before, that's not how it works. There's actually a queue or a validator queue or a withdrawal queue to get out. So at most, I think it's like 30,000 ETH-ish a day can actually be withdrawn, which is basically nothing, right? In the context of the wider kind of like market liquidity. But I would also argue that because withdrawals are enabled, because people know that they can enter and exit at any time, we're going to see even more ETH get staked. So it's probably going to offset that, and it might even offset that in a really big way. I'm surprised we're already at 10 million, to be honest. Like I thought we would taper out at like 5 or 6 million-ish because withdrawals aren't enabled, but we're at 10 million, which is just absolutely crazy to think about. That's, I mean, it's not 10% of the ETH supply, it's like 8% or something like that, maybe higher, a little bit higher than 8% of the ETH supply staked, knowing that it can't be withdrawn from staking, you know, for a while now. Yes, there are stake token derivatives, obviously, with RETH and STETH, and some exchanges let you kind of like have early liquidity, but still, you know, there's a lot of people doing solo staking as well. I mean, it's just really, really cool to see this. So I just wanted to kind of like go through that when it comes to the Beacon chain in terms of like economic security. There are a bunch of other things. Obviously, the Beacon chain is involved with, and kind of like the more ETH staked, the kind of like better it is. But I think I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to fill the whole episode up with staking stuff, because I've talked about that a lot recently. But yeah, I guess like a massive milestone for the Beacon chain. Just can't wait for the merge at this point, guys. Like it's coming. I can't wait till I say like it's done, right? I'm just so looking forward to it, because you know, I want the Ethereum network to be whole. I kind of like right now, like there's 2 Ethereum networks technically, and I'm kind of like, can't wait till they're whole, because then we could just have like one unified Ethereum layer, and then we can go, you know, focus on the more important things. So yeah. All right, so actually speaking of withdrawals on the Beacon chain, Alex Stokes here has put together basically a new EIP, or I guess like some discussions around the EIP that he had originally put together about withdrawals. So if you're interested in how Beacon chain withdrawals are potentially going to work, you can definitely give this EIP a read. Proto Lambda's in there with a bunch of other kind of like core devs and stuff, which is really cool to see. But just wanted to put this on your radar, because obviously I've been talking about Beacon chain withdrawals a lot recently, and there is an EIP that's kind of like being worked on, being reviewed, being revised, that the core developers hope that we can get that into Shanghai, which is the first network upgrade coming after the merge happens. So should be about 6 months after the merge, so probably end of year, Q1 2023. Have to see how it shakes out, but there is progress being made on this. All right, so the Ethereum on ARM Twitter account tweeted out today that their last Geth sync on a Raspberry Pi 4 took 56 hours to sync the whole Ethereum blockchain from scratch. This is awesome. I mean, this is done on a Raspberry Pi 4. This is not done on, some beefy hardware or anything like that. And this kind of like really puts to bed all those people who are saying that's like impossible to run an Ethereum full node. And, you might not hear it as much these days, or maybe you will. I just don't know, because it was a popular talking point for Bitcoin maximalists back in the day. And because a lot of them have me blocked at this point, I blocked a lot of them. I don't know if they're still talking about it. I'm sure they are in some capacity. But it was a very, very popular narrative that no one could run an Ethereum full node. And obviously that was false. Like, I was running an Ethereum full node. It was fine. Like, I set it up. It was super easy to do. And now you have efforts like running Geth on a Raspberry Pi 4. Like, I was running mine on just some standard hardware, not like this PC, my main PC, but kind of like another PC that I had, just running it on that. And now I'm running it on my staking PC as well right now, my ETH1 node, or I guess like my execution layer node. I should use the right terminology there. But, it's not an intensive thing to do. It's super easy to set up, and it just kind of like runs. It runs just like my validator does on the consensus layer side. But I haven't attempted this yet, and I plan to, because I have a bunch of Raspberry Pis lying around that I like to experiment on. But it's really awesome to see that you can sync Geth in only 56 hours, guys. Like that, like you may think, 56 hours, that sounds like a long time. No, it's not a long time. If you wanted to do kind of like a full sync of Geth, it usually takes this long or longer. And the fact that they can get this down to 56 hours on a Raspberry Pi 4 is awesome. And they're using a sync, method called SnapSync, which is the default sync, which does have a little bit of additional trust assumptions baked in and stuff like that. So if you wanted to do like a full sync without any of these, trust assumptions baked in, it would obviously take longer, but it probably could still work on the Raspberry Pi 4, which would be really, really cool to see play out as well. But great on the Ethereum on ARM team for getting this done and showing people that you don't need a beefy hardware in order to do this. I mean, they list the hardware here. The Raspberry Pi 4 has got 8 gig of RAM. They have an SSD. You unfortunately cannot run an Ethereum full node on a hard drive, but I mean, SSDs are pretty cheap these days. Like, it's not like, I remember when SSDs first came out, it was so expensive to buy one. You were like regarded as a god if you had a 120 gig SSD. Now you can buy like a 1 terabyte SSD for basically nothing. I don't know what it is in USD, but in Australian dollars, it's pretty cheap relative to like a hard drive. So you do need an SSD, but other than that, like that's fine. Like, you have the Raspberry Pi 4, with the RAM, you have the SSD, you obviously have the operating system on an SD card or a micro SD card that you slot in, and away you go. So very, very cool to see this from the Ethereum on ARM team. So the Ethereum.org, efforts, or a team, I should say, have translated the ETH2 renaming blog into 10 more languages. So this is the blog where they announced that they were going to deprecate the use of the term ETH2 in favor of using the term consensus layer, which refers to the beacon chain, and execution layer, which refers to quote-unquote ETH1, or the Ethereum chain we all know and love today, and we all kind of like use today. So this has been translated into 10 more languages, and I think the languages are here. Yeah, so I'm not going to read them all out here. I'm just Spanish, French, Indonesian, it seems like, and a bunch of other, I think this is an Arabic language here. So, it's just awesome that this stuff gets done, because, not only should this be available in like the most popular languages, it should be available in most of the commonly spoken languages in the world. Like, I'm not even talking the most popular ones. Like, even if there's only a couple million people who speak it, it should still be done. Because I think that Ethereum needs to, Ethereum is global, right? And we can't claim to be a truly global and truly decentralized network unless we're appealing to more than just the English-speaking countries. And Ethereum has long kind of like done the translations, done hackathons in, non-Western countries and things like that. But at the end of the day, there still needs to be more done here. Like, I still haven't seen a concerted effort from the front ends powering things like DeFi to translate to different languages out there. So we're really just still stuck in being extremely westernized right now, guys. You see it. Like, most of the people in Ethereum, in crypto, are Americans or Europeans, really, at the end of the day. There are obviously big communities in kind of like other parts of the world. South America is actually batting above its average there. Definitely Asia is very involved, but really when it comes to kind of like what we can kind of like see and where a lot of the growth is, and especially within Ethereum, it's definitely coming from the US, Eastern, probably more so Eastern Europe than Western Europe, and I guess like parts of Asia, maybe the more quote unquote westernized parts of Asia. But we need to appeal to places like obviously the Middle East and Africa. We have been doing work there, but especially their languages, because we can't expect everyone to speak English or speak one of the other popular languages. I guess like Spanish or French or German or anything like that. We definitely need to appeal to people that speak a wide kind of set of languages, and that's exactly what the Ethereum.org team does with all these translations. So yeah, if you'd rather read this great blog post, you can read that in the languages available here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. So the ETH Ecosystem Support Program has put out a blog post detailing the latest recipients of the latest local grants around Japan edition. So you can see who they're supporting here. They're supporting, I guess, 5 different teams. One of them is ZK Cream, which stands for Zero Knowledge Confidential Reliable Ethereum Anonymous Mixer. So another privacy mixer here. They're supporting that. Second one here is Ryodan System AG, building a layer 2 with ZK rollups and ZK Cloud. So another layer 2 coming to market here, I guess like ZK-based layer 2. Star Trail, which records infrastructure for physical artwork. W3A.io, which is smart lock authentication for physical devices. And FAMI, I think that's how you say it, partnership certificates on Ethereum. So actually a pretty diverse set of projects here. You know, none of these are DeFi projects from what I can tell. I think an NFT project would be, I guess, like this partnership certificate on Ethereum, and maybe, I guess, like records infrastructure for physical artwork maybe as well. But yeah, not really any DeFi stuff here. Mostly infrastructure plays, it seems. So very, very cool to see this diversity here and what the ESP is supporting. And as I said, this is a local round in Japan, so these projects are coming out of Japan. There's another country out there that is really, I think, batting above their average, but we just don't know because obviously people in Japan speak Japanese, right? I don't speak Japanese, so I've got no idea, but there have been a few people, I think, from Japan or living in Japan that speak both Japanese and English, and they kind of act as a bridge in. But for the most part, I know there's a Japanese Ethereum community, but I just kind of like, you know, because there's a language barrier there, it's very, very hard to kind of like get across that. And, you know, I think people often bring up language barriers as being like a big deal, which it is to an extent. Then they also bring up cultural barriers. You know, to be honest, guys, I think cultural barriers, especially when it comes to online networks like Ethereum, are completely overrated. Because you don't have to bring, like, you know, I'm not saying you shouldn't bring your culture with you, but Ethereum has its own culture. So it's not like you have to bring your culture, your, I guess, like, real life culture into Ethereum and you know, you can only interact with people who are part of your culture. No, I mean, we all are part of Ethereum culture. We all are Ethereans, and we all kind of, like, understand what Ethereum stands for and kind of like what we want to do with the network. So I think that, you know, shedding your old kind of like, not old, but you're like a real life identity when you're online and when you're interacting with Ethereum is a good way to go about it, especially when making new friends. But you shouldn't kind of like shed your identity and say, oh, you know, I'm not this person or I'm not from here. I think Ethereum culture is also a mixture of all the different cultures put together, but it does definitely have its unique culture, which I guess bridges those kind of like cultural divides that people bring up. So I really don't think there's massive cultural divides. It's more got to do with the language barrier for sure, because culture is one thing, but language, I mean, like culture, I think it depends, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to get into this now actually, because it's going to take the whole video. But I think it really depends on kind of like what culture it is, like, you know, what language it is, and that sort of stuff. But I think culture and language definitely are two of the biggest barriers. But I would say that the cultural barrier at this point in time is not one that is kind of like a big one. I think the language barrier is definitely bigger there. But besides translating things into different languages, I guess not much else we can do. I was hoping at this point in time in the 2020s we would have like a way to live translate from people, and we'd all have like a little earpiece that we could put in, and you know, people could speak to us in their language and it would live translate with like incredible accuracy. Obviously, we have Google Translate and stuff like that work really, really well. Don't get me wrong. But it's not kind of like ubiquitous where we can kind of just like seamlessly talk to someone in English and they can seamlessly talk seamlessly understand us in real time and then talk back to us in their native language, and we could understand them in real time as well. Maybe we'll get there eventually, I reckon. But until then, yeah, we're gonna have to keep bridging those kind of like divides there. All right, so Barnabe from the Robust Incentive Group at the Ethereum Foundation has published a blog post called Understanding Rollup Economics from First Principles, and this is all about the pricing resources in an L1-dependent economy. So I guess this is talking a lot about, or this blog post goes through a lot about kind of like how resources are going to be priced on layer 2s in L1 dependent economy, because obviously the L2s need to pay for security to the L1, and they need to kind of like interact with the L1. This is a lengthy blog post. I'm not going to TLDR it for you because I want you to go read it. It was a really great read. I learned a lot from it. I think that there's, obviously a lot of different ways that kind of like resource pricing can be done, fees can be done. It's up to kind of like the L2 operators to kind of decide what one they want to do, and then obviously once they decentralize their networks out, it's up to the kind of the community to decide what they want to do. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of like highlight this blog post for you guys because I think it's a very, very good read, and it'll teach you a lot about resource pricing on L2, which is something that a lot of you have asked about recently. Like I've seen it in the Discord channel where you ask, hey, what happens if the L2s get congested? Are they just going to get expensive again? Or can the L2s be DDoS like Solana, for example? Can the L2s kind of like get super expensive like Ethereum L1? All extremely valid questions. A lot of them are answered in this blog post, guys. So definitely go read this post. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. Speaking of blog posts, Optimism has put together a rollup recap from ETHDenver. So if you weren't at ETHDenver like me, or you weren't able to kind of get across everything, Optimism has summarized kind of like what they worked on at ETHDenver, including the mini dank sharding with data blob transactions, with a bunch of different EIPs, community projects, talks and panels. And this is mostly got to do with Optimism. But yeah, if you wanted to keep up with what they were doing in ETHDenver, kind of like rewatch a lot of the stuff here, all the links are available here in this blog post. So I just wanted to highlight that for you guys because I think it's important to study this stuff. Like, I mean, at this point in time, from what I gather from the Discord channel, I think I've kind of like summarized what you guys are most interested in. And it's Ethereum core development, specifically around the merge and sharding and proof of stake generally, and layer 2s, and I guess like a mix of DeFi and NFTs. Those seem to be like the core things you guys are interested in, which is what I'm interested in. Maybe I'm rubbing off on you there, but I think I've said it so many times before, but the most exciting place to be right now, the most exciting thing to be paying attention to right now is the layer 2 ecosystem. Seriously, you can, the funny thing is you can pay attention to nothing else and still, have kind of like no time to do anything if you're just paying attention to the L2 stuff, because there's just so much stuff happening there. So definitely go check out this post. It'll be linked in the YouTube description below. All right, so I spoke about Orbiter Finance the other day, and I did confirm that the change that they actually are supporting currently are Optimism, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, and Polygon. Well, today they are adding support for StarkNet. So I guess like this is on the testnet, I believe. I don't believe this is on mainnet just yet, I think. But yeah, they're teasing kind of like a StarkNet integration here. Awesome to see. Obviously, Orbiter Finance, as I've spoken about before, is a bridging protocol, just another one on Ethereum. And, StarkNet, I've said before, StarkNet's making waves, guys. Like, they seem to be a bit of a sleeper. I don't think many people are paying attention to them right now, but they're definitely making waves. And as I said before, they're taking a different path. They're not doing a ZK VM. They're doing their kind of like Cairo thing where you can use Warp to transpile Solidity to Cairo, and then use StarkNet, which is awesome, which is all well and good. And I'm actually liking the fact that all the major L2 players are taking their own path here. Not all ZK AVMs are created equal either. And I actually saw a great description of the differences between the ZK AVMs the other day. Maybe I can quickly bring it up for you guys now because it was a really great description. So yeah, this is a comment from a friend who said, there are different approaches being taken to support Solidity Viper EVM code on ZK rollups. Transpiling to a ZK-friendly language is what StarkNet and Polygon Maiden are doing. Compiling to a VM that's ZK-ready, which is what ZK Sync and Polygon Zero are doing. And native opcode support, which is what Polygon Hermes and Scroll are doing. So there are, not all ZK VMs are created equal. Not all ZK stuff is created equal. And on top of that, like, not only do we have the kind of diversity in the ZK space there, but we also have the diversity in the Optimism and Arbitrum space. They both use their own thing. Like, Optimism uses the OVM, Arbitrum uses the AVM. Optimism wants to be EVM equivalent. Arbitrum is EVM compatible. And there's different kind of like trade-offs of both of those sorts of things. And they have different kind of like things under the hood beyond that as well. So I love this, guys. I don't want every L2 to be the same. That is just completely pointless. L2 is the experimentation layer. That's what I've been calling it for a while now, and that's what we're seeing play out. Obviously, on L1, you can't really experiment because of the fact that to do anything on L1, to make any changes to L1, takes a very, very long time, has to go through the entire Ethereum governance process, and that's by design. We don't want fast and loose changes on Ethereum L1, but with these L2s, as long as they're in kind of like early stages or in testnet phases, stages with kind of like training wheels on, you can move hard and fast. You can do plenty of things here. You can do upgrades. You can do major upgrades. You don't have to worry about kind of like going through a decentralized governance process or anything like that. And that to me is absolutely awesome, because it means we get to kind of like get to the point of the best execution layer, or L2, as quickly as possible. And I don't think there's going to be a one size fits all. I know everyone just loves to say that, oh, ZK rollups are going to obsolete optimistic rollups. Look, guys, I actually, I've said before that I think short to medium term optimistic rollups are going to dominate. Longer term might be ZK rollups, but look, the jury is still out. Like, I don't like overpromising things. I don't like overhyping things too much. I know I am a bit of a hype man, but like I do kind of like to kind of focus on the reality of today. And the reality of today is that both Optimism and Arbitrum offer amazing experiences for people. The Polygon POS chain offers a great experience for people. ZK Sync, on Zigzag Exchange, I've always had really that's one of the apps live right now. I've always had a really good time on there. The StarkNet stuff that I've kind of like seen looks really great. At the end of the day, users are going to use what they get the most value out of, what gives them the best experience, and they're not all going to use the same thing. There's going to be different opportunities on different L2s, and we should embrace them all and use them all. The bridges are going to make it seamless to use them all. You're not even going to have to bloody worry about anything in the near future. You just be like, okay, well, this app's on Arbitrum, but I'm on StarkNet. I'm just going to bridge. That's it. It'll be cheap to bridge. You'll be able to do it all well and good and really, really quickly, and you won't even have to worry about this sort of stuff anymore. So yeah, that's kind of like how I think about the L2 landscape. But I guess back on topic, cool to see Orbiter Finance supporting StarkNet here. They seem to be marching along very, very quickly with what networks they support. All right, so the new project got announced today, or introduced today, called Astrodrop Shrines, which is a new primitive that enables anyone to distribute any amount of any ERC20 token to a weighted list of addresses of any size, all for a low constant gas cost, 161,000 gas to deploy a shrine, and 50,000 gas to distribute tokens. So this is just, I guess, like a better way to distribute kind of like airdrops, right? And this, you can go check it out on GitHub here and check out the repository and everything like that. This is obviously for developers to use, but I think this is cool. I think the fact that it's a low gas cost as well is really awesome. That'll obviously carry over to the L2s. But Astrodrop has this thread here where they kind of like go through their rationale behind it. And they say, yeah, ever since the Uni airdrop, projects have been using airdrops to give tokens to early contributors, but in every case, the list of addresses and weights is discarded, even though it contains valuable info tying addresses to reputation and off-chain actions. Isn't that a waste? So, and then they go on in this thread to kind of like describe the rest of that there. So, very, very cool new project here, new primitive, I should say. Definitely go check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description. All right, and finally, just a shout out to ZK Sync here. That they kind of put out a tweet today where they said, Matter Labs is looking for a rock star to lead our people ops team, and we're paying $10,000 for any referral that ends in a hire, even if you nominate yourself. We're also looking for a senior recruiters. The same offer applies. The job description and referral instructions below, which are in the second tweet here. So if this sounds like something that you can do, a people ops director or a recruiter or maybe anything else, really, reach out here. Go apply to kind of like on these applications here. I'll link in the YouTube description for you. I think that working for the ZK Sync team or the Matter Labs team would be absolutely awesome, right? Like, as I said, guys, like working for an L2 team is pretty much like, at this point in time, I think it's like the holy grail of where to work within the Ethereum ecosystem, because you get to touch on so many different things within Ethereum, right? You get to touch the user layer, you get to touch the bleeding edge, kind of like research layer, the protocol layer, and whether that be L1 or L2, and you get to kind of really make a difference in scaling Ethereum. So definitely go check out these roles if you haven't seen them yet. And I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.